The palace of the Valari Empire stood like a dream made of crystal and light. Its towers reached toward the purple sky of Ethon Prime, and its halls glowed with a soft silver shine that never faded. This was the heart of a civilization that ruled over 1,000 worlds. And at the door of the queen's private chambers, a human stood guard. His name was Teho. He was not tall by Valari standards. His skin was not silver like theirs. His eyes did not glow with the pale violet light that marked the royal bloodline. To anyone passing by, he looked out of place. A creature from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. A primitive. An oddity. Teho had heard all the whispers in his 2 years of service. The Valari guards called him the Deaf One because he could not speak with his mind. Every species in the galaxy had some form of telepathy. They could share thoughts like humans shared words. But humans were different. Humans were silent inside their heads. To the Valari. This made them less than children, broken, incomplete. But Queen Yuna had chosen him anyway. Teho still remembered the day he was brought to the palace. He was one of 50 humans selected for the diplomatic exchange program after Earth made first contact with the Valari Empire. Most humans were given simple jobs: cleaning, carrying, serving food, work that required no thought and no trust. But the Queen had read about Earth. She had studied human history with the same curiosity she gave to ancient star maps. And she had found something that fascinated her. Humans died for each other, not just for family. Not just for lovers. Humans died for strangers. For ideas. For kings and queens they had never met. They threw themselves in front of danger without hesitation. They protected the weak even when it cost them everything. The Valari did not understand this. Their loyalty came from mental bonds. They could feel each other's emotions. They knew when someone was lying or afraid. Trust was not earned. It was sensed. But humans had no such ability. They had to choose to trust. They had to decide to be loyal. And that decision, the Queen believed, made their loyalty stronger than any telepathic bond. So she asked for a human guard. The court had laughed. The nobles had mocked her. But Yuna was the Queen, and her word was law. Teho was brought to her chambers and told to protect her with his life. He had done so every day since. Now he stood at his post as the evening light turned the crystal walls to gold. The palace was quiet. Most of the servants had gone to prepare for the Unity Festival that would happen in 3 days. It was the greatest celebration in the Empire. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy would come to honor the Queen and renew their oaths of peace. Teho heard footsteps approaching. He did not turn his head. He had learned to identify people by the sound of their walk alone. These footsteps were heavy, but controlled. Confident. Proud. King Consort Hyunwoo. The doors to the Queen's chambers opened. Hyunwoo stepped out. He was tall and beautiful in the way all Valari nobles were beautiful. His silver hair fell past his shoulders. His violet eyes held a cold light that never warmed. He had married Queen Yuna 5 years ago in a union that joined 2 powerful houses. But Teho had noticed something in those 5 years. Hyunwoo never looked at his wife with love. He looked at her throne. Still here? Primitive? Hyunwoo said without stopping. His voice was smooth like silk over ice. I would think even a creature like you would grow tired of standing in one place. Teho said nothing. He had learned that silence angered Hyunwoo more than any response. The king consort paused. A flicker of irritation crossed his perfect face. You know, on my homeworld, we used to keep animals as pets. Small things with simple minds. They would sit at our feet and wait for scraps. You remind me of them. I am honored to serve the Queen, Teho said. His voice was calm, empty of emotion. Hyunwoo smiled. It was not a kind smile. Of course you are. What else could something like you hope for? He walked away without another word. His footsteps echoed down the crystal hall until they faded into silence. Teho let out a slow breath. He had dealt with worse insults. On Earth, he had been a soldier. He had served in conflicts that the Valari would never understand. He had lost friends. He had held dying men in his arms. A few cruel words from a spoiled prince meant nothing to him, but something about Hyunwoo troubled him. The Valari could sense lies through their telepathy. They could feel fear and guilt and hidden intentions. But Hyunwoo was a noble. He had been trained since childhood to shield his thoughts from others. His mind was a locked door that no one could open without his permission. And behind that door, Taiho sensed something dark. He could not explain it. He had no telepathy. He could not read minds or feel emotions through the air. But he had something else. 20 years of watching people. 20 years of learning how a man's shoulders tightened when he was lying. How his eyes moved when he was planning something. How his voice changed pitch when he was hiding fear. Hyunwoo was hiding something. Taiho was certain of it. The door opened again, and a young woman stepped out. Her name was Sujin. She was the queen's personal handmaiden, a gentle soul with kind eyes and a soft voice. She had always been friendly to Taiho, unlike the other servants who avoided him. "The queen is resting," Sujin said. "She asked me to bring you some water." She held out a crystal cup. Taiho took it with a small bow of thanks. As their hands touched, he felt her fingers trembling. He looked at her face. She was pale. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. "Is something wrong?" he asked quietly. Sujin's gaze darted down the hall, the direction Hyunwoo had gone. For a moment, raw terror flashed across her face. Then she forced a smile. "Nothing," she said. "I am just tired. The festival preparations have been difficult." She hurried away before Taiho could say another word. He watched her go. His instincts screamed at him. Something was very wrong in this palace. He could feel it like a storm building on the horizon. The air was heavy with secrets. Taiho turned back to his post. He was just a human, a primitive creature with a deaf mind. No one would listen to his concerns. No one would believe his suspicions, but he would watch. He would wait. And if the queen was in danger, he would do what humans had always done. He would protect her, no matter the cost. The crystal walls glowed softly around him. The palace was beautiful and peaceful. But beneath that beauty, something dark was growing. And Taiho, the human guard with no telepathy and no status, was the only one who could see it. The storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. 3 days passed. Taiho watched everything. He watched the servants move through the halls with their heads down. He watched the nobles gather in small groups and fall silent when anyone approached. He watched Hyunwoo smile at his wife during meals and then disappear for hours into the eastern wing of the palace where no one was allowed to follow. Most of all, he watched Sujin. The young handmaiden grew thinner each day. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. She jumped at small sounds and avoided being alone with anyone. Whatever secret she carried, it was eating her alive. Taiho could not use telepathy to find the truth. So he used the only tools he had. His eyes, his ears, his memory. On the second night, he followed Hyunwoo. It was dangerous. If he was caught, he would be punished, perhaps killed. A human spying on the king consort would be seen as an act of war. But Taiho had survived worse dangers. He moved through the shadows of the palace like a ghost. His feet made no sound. His breathing was slow and controlled. Hyunwoo entered a private chamber in the eastern wing. Through a crack in the door, Taiho saw 5 figures waiting inside. They were nobles from the outer territories. Their faces were cold and hard. These were not men who came to discuss trade or politics. These were men who wanted power. Taiho could not hear their words clearly. The door was too thick, but he caught fragments. The festival, the queen. It must look natural. Blame the humans. His blood turned to ice. He wanted to burst through the door and demand answers. He wanted to grab Hyunwoo by the throat and force him to confess. But he was one man against 6 powerful nobles. He had no proof, no evidence. Only the words of a primitive against the word of royalty. He needed more. The next morning, Taiho found Sujin alone in the garden. She was sitting by a fountain, staring at the water with empty eyes. When she saw him approach, she tried to stand and leave. But Taiho was faster. "Please," he said softly. "I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say." Her voice shook. "I know you are afraid. I know something terrible is happening. I saw it in your eyes that first night. You know something about the king consort? Something dangerous." Sujin's face crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She looked around wildly, making sure no one else was near. Then she grabbed Taiho's arm and pulled him behind a tall hedge where they could not be seen. "I heard them," she whispered. 3 nights ago. I was cleaning the Eastern Hall, and I heard voices from the king consort's private chamber. I should have left. I should have walked away. But I was curious. I pressed my ear to the door, and I heard everything.
Ow.
Her whole body was trembling now. They are going to kill her. The Queen. During the Unity Festival, there is a poison. Something from your world. From Earth, it will look like she died of natural causes. And then they will blame humans. They will say, one of your kind poisoned her. They will use her death to start a war against your people. Taiho felt the world tilt beneath his feet. A poison from Earth. Something no Valari doctor would recognize. It was brilliant and terrible. Hyun Woo would become ruler. Humans would be hunted across the galaxy, and no one would ever know the truth. "Why did you not tell anyone?" he asked. Sujin laughed bitterly. "Tell who? The king consort is a noble. His mind is shielded. No one can read his thoughts. If I accuse him without proof, I will be the one who dies. They will say, I am lying. They will say, I am a traitor." She gripped his hands. "You are human. You cannot use telepathy. But maybe that is why you can see what others cannot. Please, you must save her." Taiho's mind raced. He needed evidence. Something solid. Something that could not be denied. "Where does he keep his private communications?" he asked. "In his study. There is a device. He uses it to send encrypted messages." That night, Taiho made his move. The eastern wing was dark and silent. Guards patrolled the halls, but Taiho had memorized their patterns. He slipped between them like smoke, his heart pounding but his hands steady. The study door was locked. But Taiho had learned to pick locks long before he came to space. Earth had taught him many useful skills. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, the room was filled with expensive furniture and glowing screens. Taiho found the communication device quickly. It was protected by encryption that he could not break. But he did not need to break it. He only needed to copy it. He pulled out a small recording device hidden in his uniform. It was human technology. Simple, but effective. He photographed every message, every file, every scrap of data he could find. The evidence was all there. Names, dates, plans, everything Hunwoo thought was safe behind his locked doors. Taiho smiled grimly. The Valari relied on their telepathy so much that they forgot about simple things. Locks, cameras, written records. They never imagined that someone with a deaf mind could be a threat. He was almost finished when the door opened. General Minho stood in the doorway. He was the commander of the Royal Guard, a tall Valari warrior with scars on his face and ice in his eyes. His hand rested on his weapon. "Human," he said slowly. "What are you doing in the king consort's private study?" Taiho did not run. He did not lie. He looked Minho straight in the eyes and spoke the truth. "I am trying to save the Queen's life." Minho's expression did not change. For a long moment they stood in silence. Then the general stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I have served the Queen for 20 years, Minho said quietly. "I have protected her since she was a child. And for the past several months, I have sensed something wrong. Shadows in the king consort's mind. Dark places he does not want anyone to see." He looked at Taiho with new eyes. "I thought I was imagining things. But you see it too, even without telepathy. Perhaps especially without it. You believe me? I believe that something evil is happening in this palace. And I believe you are the only one stupid enough to do something about it." A ghost of a smile crossed Minho's scarred face. "Show me what you have found." Taiho showed him the photographs. The messages. The evidence Minho's face grew darker with every image. By the end, his hands were shaking with rage. The festival is tomorrow, Minho said. We have no time to go through proper channels. If we arrest Hunhua now, his allies will escape and try again. Then we let him make his move, Taiho said. We let him think he has one. And we catch them all at once. Minho studied him for a long moment. You understand that if this fails, we will both die? Yes. And you are willing to take that risk? For a queen who is not even your own species? Taiho thought of Earth. He thought of all the soldiers who had died for people they never knew. He thought of what it meant to be human. That is what we do, he said simply. Minho nodded slowly. For the first time, there was respect in his eyes. Then let us save our queen. They worked through the night in Minho's private quarters. The general had technology that could decode the encrypted messages. Piece by piece, the conspiracy revealed itself like a monster crawling out of the darkness. There were 12 nobles involved. 12 powerful families from across the empire who believed that Queen Yuna was too soft, too kind, too willing to share power with lesser species. They had watched her welcome humans into Valari society, and they had decided she was a threat to everything they held dear. Hyunwoo was their leader. He had married the queen not for love, but for access. For 5 years, he had smiled at her, shared her bed, and planned her murder. The poison was the key to everything. It came from a plant that grew only on Earth, a rare flower that produced a toxin deadly to Valari biology. The symptoms would look like heart failure, natural, tragic. No one would suspect murder because no Valari doctor had ever seen this poison before, and when the queen died, Hyunwoo would point his finger at the humans. Your kind are already hated by many, Minho said grimly. The nobles see you as animals. Pets at best, pests at worst. If they believe a human killed the queen, there will be no trial, no investigation, only blood. Taiho understood. Earth would be blamed. Humans across the galaxy would be hunted. Millions would die. All because one man wanted a throne. How will they give her the poison? Taiho asked. Minho pulled up a hologram of the Unity Festival ceremony. The festival follows ancient tradition. After the opening feast, the queen offers a sacred toast. She takes a ceremonial cup into the private shrine and drinks alone as a blessing to the ancestors. No one is allowed to follow. No one is allowed to watch. She will be completely alone. Yes, and Hyunwoo himself will hand her the cup. As her husband, it is his honor. Minho's voice was bitter. His honor? To murder her.
Oh.
Taiho stared at the hologram. His mind worked through every possibility, every angle, every chance for failure. If we arrest him before the toast, his allies will escape, Taiho said slowly. They will go underground. They will try again in a year. In 5 years? In 10. The queen will never be safe. But if we let him give her the cup, she might actually drink it before we can stop her. Then we make sure she never drinks it. Minho raised an eyebrow. How? I will be there. Right at the door of the shrine. When she tries to enter, I will stop her. I will tell her the truth in front of everyone. And when Hyunwoo denies it, we will prove he is lying. The word of a human against a prince of the blood. The court will laugh. They will not laugh when they see what the poison does. Taiho explained his plan. Minho listened without interrupting. When Taiho finished, the general was silent for a long moment. It is insane, Minho finally said. Yes, it puts everything on one moment. One chance. If you fail, the queen dies. We die. Your entire species suffers for generations. Yes? Minho looked at him with something like wonder. You humans truly are mad. We prefer to call it brave. A small laugh escaped the general. It was the first time Taiho had ever heard him laugh. Very well, Minho said. We will do it your way. But there is one more thing we need. What? Someone to watch Sujin? The conspirators know she overheard them. I do not think they will let her live to see the festival. Taiho felt his stomach drop. He had been so focused on the queen that he had forgotten about the handmaiden. The girl who had risked everything to tell him the truth. I will protect her, he said. You cannot be in two places at once. Then find someone you trust. Someone outside the conspiracy. Minho nodded slowly. There are a few guards I know are loyal. I will assign them to her. They will not let her out of their sight. The first light of dawn was creeping through the windows. The Unity Festival would begin in 12 hours. 12 hours to save the Queen. 12 hours to expose the traitors. 12 hours to prevent a genocide? Taiho stood and walked to the window. The crystal towers of the palace glowed pink and gold in the sunrise. It was beautiful, peaceful, a perfect mask hiding the ugliness beneath. Why do you do this? Minho asked quietly from behind him. Taiho did not turn around. Do what? Risk your life. For strangers, for a queen who is not your own, for a galaxy that treats your kind like insects. There was genuine curiosity in the general's voice. I have read about human history. Your wars, your cruelty, your endless capacity for destruction. And yet also this insane willingness to sacrifice everything for others. I do not understand it. Taiho thought about the question. He thought about Earth, about the soldiers he had served with, about the friends he had buried. On my world, he said slowly, we have a saying. The measure of a person is not what they protect, but what they are willing to lose. He turned to face Minho. I have lost many things. Friends, family, my home. I thought, when I came to space, that I had nothing left to lose. But I was wrong. What do you have left? My honor. My duty. The promise I made to protect the Queen. Taiho smiled slightly. Those are things I will never lose, because I will die before I let them go. Minho studied him for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked Taiho completely. He bowed. It was a deep bow. The kind of bow that Valari gave only to those they respected above all others. I have served the Queen my entire life, Minho said as he straightened. I have seen countless soldiers, countless guards, nobles and warriors and generals. But I have never met anyone like you, Taiho of Earth. His voice was thick with emotion. Whatever happens today, know that I am proud to stand beside you. Taiho felt something warm bloom in his chest. For 2 years, he had been mocked, insulted, treated like an animal. And now, for the first time, someone saw him as he truly was. Not a primitive, not a pet, but a warrior. Thank you, General, he said quietly. Mina clapped him on the shoulder. Now get some rest. Tonight, we make history. Taiho tried to sleep, but his mind would not quiet. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that could go wrong. The poison, the conspirators. The moment when he would have to step in front of the Queen and tell her that her husband wanted her dead. What if she did not believe him? What if Yunhua was faster? What if he failed? He closed his eyes and pushed the doubts away. Fear was a luxury he could not afford. He had one job, one purpose, one chance. He would not waste it. The hours crawled by. The sun rose higher. The palace came alive with the sounds of preparation. Servants rushed through the halls. Musicians practiced their songs. Decorations were hung from every pillar and arch, and somewhere in the eastern wing, Hunhua was preparing to murder his wife. Taiho rose from his bed as the afternoon shadows grew long. He put on his uniform. He checked his weapons. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a man ready to die. The Unity Festival was about to begin. And so was the battle for everything. He believed in the great hall of the Unity Festival blazed with light and color. 10,000 guests filled the enormous space. Nobles in flowing robes, ambassadors from distant worlds, warriors in ceremonial armor. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy had come to honor Queen Yuna and celebrate peace among the stars. Taiho stood near the shrine entrance, dressed in his formal guard uniform. His heart beat steady and slow. His hands did not shake. He had trained his entire life for moments like this. Moments when everything depended on 1 second, one choice, one action. The Queen entered the hall, and the crowd fell silent. She was beautiful. Her silver skin glowed in the light. Her violet eyes shone with warmth as she looked upon her people. She wore a gown of white silk that flowed behind her like water. On her head sat the crown of stars, an ancient treasure that had been worn by 100 queens before her. Walking beside her was Hyun-woo. He was smiling, the perfect husband, the devoted consort. He held her hand gently and whispered something in her ear that made her laugh. To everyone watching, they were the picture of royal love. Only Tae-ho saw the truth, the coldness behind Hyun-woo's smile, the calculation in his eyes, the way his fingers tightened on the queen's hand just a little too hard. Tonight, he planned to kill her, and he was enjoying every moment of the performance. The feast began. Course after course of exotic foods from across the galaxy. Music filled the air. Dancers performed ancient rituals. The queen moved through the crowd, greeting her guests with grace and kindness. She had a word for everyone, a smile for every face. Even the lowest servant received her attention, as if they were royalty themselves. This was why her people loved her. This was why she was dangerous to men like Hyun-woo. Tae-ho watched the conspirators. He had memorized their faces from the encrypted messages. They were scattered through the crowd, trying to look casual. But Tae-ho could see the tension in their shoulders, the way they kept glancing at Hyun-woo, the way they positioned themselves near the exits. They were ready to run if something went wrong. General Minho's soldiers were ready to... They stood at every door, disguised as regular guards. When the moment came, no one would escape. The hours passed. The feast continued. And then, at last, the ancient ceremony began. A gong sounded through the hall. The crowd grew quiet. A servant appeared, carrying a golden tray with 2 crystal chalices. The ceremonial wine. The sacred toast. Queen Yuna took her place at the center of the hall. Hyun-woo stood beside her, his face solemn and respectful. "My beloved people," the queen said, her voice carrying through the silence. "Tonight, we celebrate unity, peace among all worlds, hope for all beings." She turned to Hyun-woo with a soft smile. "And I am blessed to share this moment with my husband, who has stood by my side through all things." Hyun-woo bowed his head humbly. "The honor is mine, my queen." He took 1 chalice from the tray and presented it to her. His movements were smooth and practiced. Just a loving husband serving his wife. No one suspected anything, except Tae-ho. He watched Hyun-woo's hands. Watched the way his fingers curled around the cup. Watched the tiny smile that flickered across his face for just 1 second. The smile of a man who knew he had already won. The queen accepted the chalice. She raised it toward the crowd. "To unity, to peace, to the future we build together," the crowd echoed her words. 10,000 voices speaking as one. Then Queen Yuna turned toward the shrine. According to tradition, she would enter alone and drink the sacred wine as a blessing to the ancestors. No one could follow. No one could watch. She walked toward the shrine door. Toward death, Tae-ho moved. He stepped directly into her path, blocking the entrance. His body was a wall between her and the poison she held in her hands. The crowd gasped. This was unthinkable. A guard blocking the queen during the sacred ceremony. It was an insult, a crime, perhaps even treason. Queen Yuna stopped. Her violet eyes met his. There was confusion on her face, surprise, but not yet fear.
"Tae-ho,"
she said softly. "What are you doing?" He looked at her. This woman who had given him a chance when no one else would. This woman who saw value in humans when the entire galaxy saw only primitives. This woman who was kind and good and deserved so much better than the monster she had married. "Don't enter, my queen," he said. His voice was clear and strong. It carried through the silent hall. Every ear heard his words. "Your husband plans to kill you." For a moment no one moved. No one breathed. The words hung in the air like thunder before lightning. Then Hyun-woo laughed. It was a cold sound, sharp and cruel. "This is ridiculous," he said, stepping forward. "A human accusing me? A primitive creature with no telepathy, no proof, no understanding of our ways? He turned to the crowd with his arms spread wide. My people, this is what happens when we allow lesser beings into our sacred halls. They do not understand honor. They do not understand loyalty. They only understand chaos and lies. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many heads nodded in agreement. Of course the human was lying. How could a creature like that know anything? But Queen Yuna had not moved. She was still looking at Taiho, still searching his eyes. Why do you say this? She asked quietly. I have evidence, my queen. Messages between your husband and 12 nobles who plan to take your throne. They created a poison from a plant that grows only on my world. A poison that no Valari doctor would recognize. When you die, they will blame humans. They will start a war against my people. Millions will suffer for one man's ambition? Lies. Hyun Woo shouted. His composure was cracking. I demand this creature be arrested immediately. Then prove he is wrong, said a new voice. General Minho stepped out of the crowd. His scarred face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet rage. If the human is lying, the chalice will be clean, Minho continued. Test it. Let our doctors examine the wine. If there is no poison, we will execute him for his crimes. But if there is poison, he turned to Hyun Woo with a look of cold fury, then we will know who the true criminal is. The crowd stirred. This was reasonable. This was fair. Even Hyun Woo could not argue against a simple test. But Hyun Woo was done playing games. This is absurd, he snarled. He grabbed for the chalice in the queen's hands. Give me that. I will drink it myself to prove there is nothing wrong. But Taiho was faster. He stepped between Hyun Woo and the queen. He knocked the chalice from her hands with one swift motion. It fell to the marble floor and shattered. The wine spread across the white stone, and where it touched, the marble began to smoke. A horrified silence fell over the hall. Everyone watched as the wine burned through the ancient stone like acid. Black marks spread across the floor. The air filled with the smell of destruction that was supposed to be inside the queen's body. Queen Yuna stared at the ruined floor. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled. Slowly, she turned to look at her husband. Hyun Woo, she whispered, what have you done? His mask finally broke. All the charm, all the pretense, all the careful lies, gone in an instant. His face twisted with hatred. What I should have done years ago, he spat. You are weak, Yuna. You care more about primitives and peasants than about power. The empire needs a strong ruler. A ruler who will crush our enemies instead of welcoming them into our homes. Arrest him, Queen Yuna said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Arrest them all. Minho's soldiers moved. The conspirators tried to run, but every door was blocked. One by one, they were taken down. 12 nobles. 12 traitors. 12 men who had tried to destroy everything the queen had built. Hyun Woo was the last to fall. He fought like a wild animal, screaming curses and threats. But in the end, he was just another prisoner in chains. The great hall fell silent. Queen Yuna stood alone at the center of 10,000 witnesses. Her husband was a traitor. Her life had been saved by a human. Everything she thought she knew had crumbled in a single moment. She looked at Taiho. He bowed his head, waiting for her judgment. Slowly, she walked toward him. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. When she reached him, she did something no queen had ever done before. She took his hand. Thank you, she said softly. You saved my life. Taiho looked up at her. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. It was my honor, my queen. 1 week passed after the Unity Festival. 7 days of trials and confessions and justice. Hyun Woo and his 12 conspirators were found guilty of treason, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit genocide. The evidence was overwhelming. Messages, plans, records of the poison being developed in secret laboratories. Everything Taiho had photographed was laid bare for the entire galaxy to see. There was no defense. No excuse, no escape. Hyun Woo was sentenced to exile on a frozen moon at the edge of the empire. He would spend the rest of his life in a cold cell, alone with his ambitions and his failures. The other conspirators received similar punishments. Their families were stripped of their titles. Their fortunes were seized. Their names were erased from the noble records. The conspiracy was over, but the healing had only begun. On the seventh day, Queen Yuna addressed the Empire. Her broadcast reached every world under Valari rule. Billions of beings watched as their queen stood before them, alone on a stage of crystalline light. She wore simple white robes, no crown, no jewels, just a woman speaking to her people. 1 week ago, my husband tried to kill me, she began. Her voice was calm but heavy with emotion. He poisoned my sacred chalice with a substance from Earth. He planned to blame humanity for my death, and use that lie to start a war. Millions would have died. Entire worlds would have burned. All because one man wanted power. She paused. The silence stretched across the stars. But I am alive. I stand before you today because of one person, human. A man named Taiho, from a small blue planet on the edge of our galaxy. Images of Taiho appeared on screens across the Empire. His face, his uniform, his steady eyes. Many of you have never met a human, the Queen continued. You know them only from stories. Primitives. Creatures without telepathy. Beings so limited that they cannot even share their thoughts. For centuries, we have looked down on them. We have laughed at their weakness. We have called them animals. Her voice grew stronger. But Taiho taught me something that all our telepathy and technology could not. He showed me that there are other ways to see, other ways to know, other ways to trust. Revelry read minds. We sense emotions. We believe that truth lives only in what we can feel through our mental bonds. But because of this, we have grown blind. We stopped looking with our eyes. We stopped listening with our ears. We stopped paying attention to the small things that matter most. Taiho could not read my husband's thoughts. He could not sense his emotions. But he watched. He noticed. He saw the darkness that all our telepaths missed. Because humans evolved in a different way. They learned to read faces instead of minds. They learned to trust actions instead of feelings. They developed something that we have forgotten. They developed intuition, instinct, the ability to know truth without being told. The Queen's eyes glistened with tears. Hyunwoo shielded his mind from us. He hid his thoughts behind walls that no telepath could break. And we accepted those walls because our culture forbids us from looking too closely at royalty. But Taiho did not accept them. He looked past the walls. He saw the monster hiding beneath the smile. This is the gift that humans bring to our galaxy. Not strength. Not technology. Not power. Something more precious. A different way of seeing. A different way of being. She took a deep breath. Today, I am announcing a new law. From this moment forward, humans will be welcomed as full citizens of the Valari Empire. They will have the same rights, the same protections, and the same opportunities as any other species under our rule. Earth will be offered a formal alliance. Our two peoples will stand together as equals. The broadcast showed reactions from across the galaxy. Cheering crowds, shocked faces, arguments, and celebrations. The announcement was controversial. Many still hated humans. Many still believed they were lesser beings, but the Queen was not finished. I am also announcing a new honor. For the first time in our history, a human will be knighted into the Royal Guard. Taiho of Earth will become the first human knight. Of the Valari crown, he will serve as a symbol of everything our empire can become when we open our hearts to those who are different from us. The broadcast ended. That evening, Taiho stood in the royal garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. He had spent the day receiving congratulations from people who had once mocked him. Lords and ladies who had called him primitive now bowed their heads in respect. Servants who had avoided his eyes now smiled when they saw him. It felt strange, unreal, like a dream. He might wake from at any moment. He heard footsteps behind him, soft and graceful. He knew who it was before he turned around. You are troubled, Queen Yuna said as she came to stand beside him. It's not troubled, Taiho replied. Just thinking. About what? About how much has changed. 1 week ago, I was nothing. A primitive guard with a deaf mind. Now people call me a hero, he shook his head slowly. I am the same person I was before. I have not changed. No, the Queen agreed. You have not changed. But the way people see you has changed, and sometimes that is enough. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunset. You could have died, she said quietly, when you blocked my path. When you accused my husband, any of his allies could have killed you before Minho's soldiers reached them. You risked everything, yes? Why? I am not your queen. Earth does not answer to the Valari Empire. You had no duty to protect me. Taiho thought about the question. He thought about all the things he could say. About honor. About duty. About the promises he had made. But in the end, he chose simpler words. On Earth, we have a saying. The measure of loyalty is not what you protect, but what you are willing to lose. And what were you willing to lose? He turned to look at her. This woman who had been betrayed by her own husband. This woman who had given him a chance when no one else would. This woman who was now giving his entire species a chance at something better. Everything, Your Majesty, he said. That is what humans do. We protect those we care about, even when it costs us everything. Even when we gain nothing in return. It is not logical. It is not smart. But it is who we are. Queen Yuna's eyes filled with tears. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then she reached out and took his hand. I have been queen for 15 years, she said softly. I have been surrounded by nobles and advisors and telepaths who could read my every thought. And yet I have never felt more alone than I did in my marriage to Hainou. She squeezed his hand gently. You are the first person in a very long time who has made me feel safe. Taiho did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He simply stood beside her, holding her hand. Watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky, for the first time since her coronation, Queen Yuna did not feel alone, and for the first time since leaving Earth, Taiho felt like he had found a home. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of dangers. There were still those who hated humans, still those who would fight against change, still battles to be won and wars to be prevented, but tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, a human and a queen stood together in a garden of crystal and light. Two people from different worlds, different species, different lives, united by something that could not be measured or sensed or understood through. Telepathy, loyalty, trust, hope. The stars burned bright above them. And somewhere across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, millions of humans looked up at the same stars without knowing that one of their own had changed everything, that one of their own had proven what they were. Truly worth, not primitives, not pets, not creatures to be pitied or ignored. Protectors, guardians, beings capable of a kind of loyalty that could save worlds.